esteemed colleagues, concerned citizens, today we stand at a precipice. The specter of a protracted trade war looms large between the United States and China, casting a shadow of uncertainty over the global economic landscape. It is imperative that we confront the gravity of this situation and analyze, with unwavering focus, the forces that have brought us to this critical juncture. The central question that confronts us is this: will China, in the face of mounting pressure, compromise with the United States? Current analysis suggests a grim answer: China is unlikely to yield. Several factors fortify this resolute stance. Firstly, China has demonstrated its unwavering commitment to decisive countermeasures. The imposition of retaliatory tariffs, such as the announced 34% tariff on all goods originating from the United States, serves as a stark warning. China has emphatically declared its intention to resolutely safeguard its own rights and interests, signaling that it will not submit to unilateral demands. Secondly, we must acknowledge China's burgeoning economic resilience. In recent years, China has strategically diversified its economic foundations, reducing its reliance on exports to the United States through the expansion of domestic demand and the vigorous promotion of industrial upgrading. In 2025, exports to the United States constitute a mere 15% of China's total exports. Furthermore, China is proactively mitigating market risks through ambitious initiatives such as the Belt and Road and strategic regional trade agreements like the RCEP. Thirdly, we cannot ignore the weighty political considerations that shape China's position. In the complex arena of Sino-US strategic competition, any perceived compromise could be interpreted as a sign of weakness, with potentially devastating consequences for domestic political credibility and international standing. China is increasingly inclined to challenge U.S. unilateralism through the mechanisms of multilateral institutions, such as the World Trade Organization. The perilous path, forecasting the ramifications of no compromise if both nations persist in their unyielding positions, we must brace ourselves for a series of alarming trends and repercussions. Firstly, we face the ominous prospect of a further escalation of the trade war. The potential implementation of Trump's threatened 50% additional tariffs could trigger a devastating tariff spiral, with China poised to respond with further increases in counter-tariff rates, leading to a crippling surge in bilateral trade costs. This escalation would precipitate an accelerated restructuring of global supply chains, as multinational corporations scramble to relocate production capacity to mitigate risks. While China's manufacturing sector would confront intense pressure to relocate, this upheaval could also catalyze the crucial process of domestic supply chain localization. Secondly, we must confront the specter of severe economic and financial shocks. China's economic growth faces formidable pressure. UBS predicts that even a 10% tariff imposed by the United States could shave 0.3 to 0.4 percentage points off China's GDP growth rate, and higher tariffs would only amplify this detrimental impact. Financial markets would be subjected to acute volatility. The renminbi would face depreciation pressure, and stock markets, particularly those reliant on exports, would experience heightened turbulence, mirroring the alarming 6% drop in the Nasdaq index on April 5 due to trade war anxieties. Thirdly, the very foundations of the global trade system are threatened with fragmentation. U.S. unilateralism erodes the authority of the World Trade Organization, potentially compelling China to forge alliances with the European Union and other nations to champion reforms and establish a de-Americanized trade alliance. The decoupling of Sino-US trade could accelerate the ascendancy of regionalization over globalization, fostering the deepening of regional free trade agreements in East Asia, Europe, and other pivotal regions, exemplified by initiatives such as the China-EU Investment Agreement and the expansion of the CPTPP. A world in flux. Analyzing the responses of other nations in this unfolding drama, the responses of other major players, such as the European Union and Southeast Asian nations, are critical. The European Union has adopted a stance of resolute countermeasures. European Commission President von der Leyen has forthrightly condemned the U.S. tariff policy for its flagrant violation of multilateral rules, issuing a stern warning of retaliatory measures, including the imposition of a 20% tariff on U.S. goods. Bolstered by a low degree of trade dependence on the U.S., approximately 16%, a unified market, and formidable technological advantages, the EU is unlikely to compromise in the near term. Southeast Asian countries present a more nuanced picture, characterized by a combination of partial compromise and strategic adjustment. Nations highly dependent on exports to the United States, such as Vietnam and Malaysia, with exports accounting for over 20% of their GDP, may engage in limited concessions, such as currency depreciation and restrictions on Chinese investment to secure U.S. tariff exemptions. However, these concessions are unlikely to fully satisfy U.S. demands. In the long term, Southeast Asian nations are strategically diversifying their economic partnerships, strengthening cooperation with emerging markets like China and India, as exemplified by Vietnam's accelerated accession to RCEP, to mitigate their dependence on the United States. Japan and South Korea are navigating this turbulent landscape through limited compromise and strategic negotiation. Japan, despite facing tariffs as high as 24% from the United States, may seek partial exemptions through supply chain adjustments, such as expanding investment in the U.S., while simultaneously pursuing deeper cooperation with China. South Korea, confronted with a daunting 25% tariff, may push for renegotiation of the U.S.-South Korea Free Trade Agreement. However, the significant dependence of key industries, such as semiconductors, on China limits South Korea's capacity for compromise. A world reshaped, the inevitable shift in the global order. In conclusion, it is with a heavy heart that I must convey that the Sino-US trade war is unlikely to abate in the near future. Both nations are engaged in a high-stakes game of brinkmanship, testing each other's resolve. China's firm countermeasures and growing economic resilience diminish the prospects of compromise, and major economies like the European Union are also poised to respond forcefully to U.S. tariff threats. Looking ahead, we must anticipate a profound transformation of the global trade paradigm. The world is inexorably moving towards a multipolar system, characterized by the ascendance of regional cooperation. The United States, through its pursuit of unilateralism, risks further isolating itself on the world stage. The challenges before us are immense, but it is in times of crisis that our resolve is tested and our ingenuity is summoned. We must strive for a future defined by collaboration, not conflict, and by shared prosperity, not destructive competition. The Trump administration is bringing destruction to Wall Street stock market speculators and currency hegemony by blunt radical tariff policy. Hyperinflation is going to happen in the States very soon if Federal Reserve does not lower interest rate quickly as President Trump wished for. American general publics will suffer from shrinking expendable incomes and step into abysmal recession for decades to come. USA is turning into a developing country from the most developed country in the world. What's your opinion on the Trump tariff war foreign trade policy? Please leave your comments here and click the like and subscribe button to help me grow this channel.